and welcome to another chapter. So, in this chapter, we're going to talk about refresh token. So, we already implemented refresh token in our application. If you are coming to this video for the first time, don't worry. You can go to the playlist, start watching all the videos, and you see what we're talking about. But if you are watching continuously, you already know that when we refreshed our application, our app was loading without needing to request a prompt to log in, and we persisted our token. That's good. To give you a little bit of context, let's look at our code. Here is where we implemented login, and in the token request, we added the scope of offline access. So the offline access scope will generate refresh token. So, and if you remember, then this is the refresh token in this function set the local variables where we used it in login and init function. We stored this, and whenever we load the application, let's go to init. So we've been checking if this is there, and then we made a token request, and then we got the token back here. So this was the way that we could persist the login, and then we had the refresh token. While this is great because this gives a great opportunity to user, so they don't need to log in every time, and this is a great user experience. On the other hand, it actually adds up a lot of security risk because the refresh tokens means, well, if you have the refresh token, you can request for access token, and well, there are something here. So there are a couple of things that can be done, to be honest. And the things that I'm mentioning in this video are like particularly about Auth0, but even if you are using any OAuth, server, still these are valid, and you may ask your backend developers like, oh, is it implemented or not? Or if you are the person who are going to actually implement that, so you need to take care of these stuff as well. Let's get into that. The first thing I'm going to talk is refresh token rotation. Let's see what it is. If you go to the Auth0 and then go to application that we created together, you will see there is a section says refresh token rotation. So by default, is actually what is this refresh token rotation? What it does? This is going to kind of automatically detect the abusing of the refresh token. Then what is this refresh token? So this refresh token rotation is the way that Auth0 will invalidate your refresh token whenever the time of that token is expired with a new token. So then you will later know if that token is being abused, or in case of any leakage or any problem, that can also be applied to your application. So in this case, you get a new access token based off, the refresh token that you get. So this is great because this is going to kind of automatically mitigate some of the security risk. So I recommend you to enable this. But when you enable rotation, then you get an absolute expiration automatically enabled, because then you need to give a time to this refresh token to say until what time is the lifespan of this refresh token, and then that will be exchanged. So even if you don't do this rotation, you still can have absolute expiration. So that is again a good thing about refresh token. But having a rotation, it gives an ability to exchange with a new refresh token every time, and that's a good thing for sure. And then you have I see that this is automatically enabled. You need to give a lifespan, an absolute lifespan based on seconds for this refresh token. And once that is expired, then the user will need to authenticate in order to get a new access token. So this is great. Default is, I think, 30 days. So I will leave it as is. There is another one here which I think is also good to talk about. That is the inactivity expiration. So by default, there are some times for sure when user is not using your, token within that period, then the token will be expired, and then they need to go through the re-authentication, process. Well, that's good, but you can also control that here in activity, lifetime. So I think again by default this is around 15 days. You can change it to any time that you want. You can say, like, if user within 30 days, they do not use this token at all. Like, let's say, well, a typical example would be your user is they don't open the application at all in 30 days. What should happen? Then in that case, when they are coming after 31st day to the application, then everything is expired. Then they are enforced to go through the re-authentication process and get a new access token and new, all the process go again from scratch, and they get a refresh token, and then they can continue doing what they do. This is a great things that you should do, and you should think about it. And if, let's say, you do not have this expiration here enabled, that's the things that goes actually indefinitely. That means, well, that stays there forever. I don't think this is a great idea to have an application like an indefinite access token or refresh token, because that in that case, if there is any leakage for that token, then it can be exchanged with access token, and then access token will open up whole a lot of things for people. So maybe you want to consider that in your application. So typically as a mobile developer, though, you are not really dealing with these things, and these are the things that is set in the server, the OAuth server. So you don't need to think about it, but it's good to understand what is this stuff. So now you enabled all of this. That's good. And then you can go and save it. And then what you need to do in the code, well, technically, probably nothing, because you already, at least in the previous videos, we already added offline access. We already get refresh token. We just needed to have a little bit of more security for our refresh token. I hope now you better understand refresh token and how you can secure them, even though you might not need to do that yourself. But it's great that you should understand why it is important to secure this refresh token, and what are the different ways. I showed you the different ways in Auth0, but you're not limited to that for sure. And if you're using any different OAuth server, so you can ask your backend developers, or if you're implementing that, you can take care of that yourself. With that said, now I believe you have a better understanding of refresh token and how you can secure it, whether you are doing that yourself or your backend developers, or maybe you're using any services for OAuth. So now you know this better. Let's move on to the next chapter, and we're going to have fun with social connections. See you in the next chapter.